of you are mentally prepared to follow your lessons again for this week. We are getting close to our mid-semester break. While it is good news, yet still we have to complete something before and also get ready to the test, mid-semester test, which shall soon follow immediately after the break. So it is of a mixed nature, whether we have to be happy or concerned. Well, now, I had asked you to submit the topics for your assignments by the end of the 5th week. So I hope that you have prepared these. Please agree among you, form the groups. I have given the details in the course outline. Towards the end of the course outline, you will see some details about assignment topics and formation of groups and other details, and also in the guidelines. So I hope that before the end of this week, you could submit assignment details. So you can choose any topic or issue related to a course outline, but do not take the topic directly mentioned there, because the purpose is not to provide summary of a topic in the course outline, but to discuss something which is related to it, where you can do research, reading, and material, and provide a meaningful and well-written paper. Well, now our topic was expression of the 3 essential elements for contract. We started to discuss about the expression of contract, where we had looked at the 3 fundamental requirements for expression, which are the expression being clearly indicative of the objective and the nature of the contract the parties are creating, and then conformity of the acceptance to the offer, which is essential for the expressions of the contractors coming together in order to create a single contract. And the third requirement for expression was continuity. Well, we had briefly mentioned that continuity is required for the purpose of ensuring that the expressions can join together by being valid and alive at the point of the conjunction happening. In a situation where the expressions are created individually, separately, now first one expression will be created by a contractor, then the other contractor will create his expression or the acceptance. Now, for these two to come together, when the second expression is created, the first expression should remain valid. If the first expression had already expired, meaning the time span for that expression has already come to an end, then although all the other requirements could be fulfilled, still they may not come together in order to create a contract. You can understand this by looking at situations or those contracts where the expressions will have a very short lifespan. For instance, in contracts related to the sale of precious metals, for instance, gold, silver, here, if any offer is made for creating a contract involving the sale purchase, that offer will have a very short duration of validity. You see, minutes or even seconds, because the prices in this market are constantly changing. So the price will not remain valid for a long time. So therefore, the offer will also not remain the same for a long time. So if a party makes an offer to sell, offer to buy, it doesn't mean that after 1 hour or even half an hour or even less, the other party can create the expression and claim that there is a contract. Why? By the time the acceptance comes, if the offer had expired, then although all the other requirements are fulfilled, there cannot be a contract. The requirement of clarity will be fulfilled. The parties very clearly mention the quantity, type, genus, details, terms. All these are clearly mentioned in their expressions. And there is no discrepancy, conformity is achieved. We're looking at the basics for the contracts. Of course, the contracts have their all specific requirements. With regard to specific contract, sale has its own requirements, and sale of gold and silver have their own requirements. But looking at the fundamental requirements for contracts, let's say clarity is achieved, conformity is achieved, but if the acceptance comes too late, now there cannot be a contract despite of every other requirement being fulfilled. Why so? What is lacking here? Continuity is lacking. So this requirement refers to the expressions remaining valid so that they can join together to create a contract. Each expression must remain valid so that they can come together to create a contract. So this is ensured by the requirement of ittisal or continuity. Well, so this is relevant to all contracts, but at different levels, because it is the custom pertaining to that particular contract or that particular subject matter that mostly dictates the duration of validity. So there is no single limit of time or single time duration for the validity of offer and acceptance in all contracts. It is governed by custom pertaining to the nature of that contract and how that contract is created among the people of that locality, and the nature of the trade and the subject matter involved. So these things will have a say in determining the time span of validity of expressions. Well, now I think I mentioned that, well, can the host please allow me to share a screen? I mentioned that the ittisal or continuity, for ittisal or continuity, the first requirement is session of contract, that both offer and acceptance take place in the same session. So this is the approach of the Islamic law to determining the possibility of the expressions coming together by the expressions remaining valid. Well, so this means that the offer and acceptance in a particular contract should be created in the same session. If one of the expressions falls outside the session, it means that it may not join the other expression. So the offer and acceptance or the expressions of the contract all should be contained within the same session, and this is referred to as the session of contract to majlisul aqd, and we define this in a very broad manner, as I mentioned, saying that session of contract is the state in which the parties are involved in the creation of the contract. A very broad way of defining this, but it is necessary to define it this way because contracts are various, and the session or the nature of the session or the length of the session can vary from contract to contract. So the state in which the parties are involved in the creation of the contract, that is how we define what the session of contract is. Well, now, so if the offer and acceptance takes place within the session as appropriate for that form of contract or that subject matter and the custom pertaining to such contracts, then the expressions can join together and create a single contract. I used to draw diagrams in the class, but unfortunately, we cannot do so now. But I think you can create a mental picture of, you see, a situation where the offer and acceptance both fall within a set duration, or one expression is created, the offer is created within the session, but then the session expires and the acceptance falls outside the session. Now, despite of the fulfillment of the remaining requirements, there cannot be a contract here. The missing condition that is not fulfilled is the condition of continuity or ittisal. Well, now, so as long as the part in a normal situation regarding a contract which is created by parties who are together, the parties who are together at the same location can create contracts, and also parties who are away from each other may create contracts. By looking at when we look at a situation where the parties create a contract while they are together at the same location, now as long as they are together, involved in the creation of the contract, conversing about the contract, this will be determined, or this will be looked at as the session of contract. So, but once the session breaks up, meaning if one of the contractors leaves the venue, that will denote the end of the session. That will denote the end of the session, which means that afterwards he cannot create an expression and insist that there is a contract if the previous expression had already been created. So which means that if once the one expression is created during the session ends, and then the second expression is created outside the session. Now they cannot join together because the session is different. The first session had come to an end. So for that second expression to result in a contract, now the first contractor will have to express once again, or at least to endorse that expression and express his willingness to accept the second expression. Then those two can join together to form a contract. Well, now, so as long as the parties are together, in the case of a contract being created while the parties are together, the session is in progress, and therefore there is a possibility of the contract being created. So remember, this is a theoretical approach to analyzing how exactly a contract comes into being. You see, if you contemplate deeply, you will see how much it is vital to understand the process of contracting and understanding the reality of contracting. Well, now, how can a session come to an end? So here we talk about termination of the session. How does a session come to an end? A session of contract comes to an end once an expression is created. The second expression created within the session, there is a contract. Second expression not created within the session, there is no contract. But in both cases, how does the session come to an end? The session usually comes to an end by the contractors separating from each other, or they are changing the venue. One party leaves the other. One party moves away. You see, or if both of them are moving together, they separate from each other. So leaving the venue or separation from each other can result in the end of the session of contract. This is a physical means of the session coming to an end. There can be another means of the session coming to an end by a contractor indicating through any means that he is not interested in completing the contract. One expression made, offer made, the other party indicates through any means that he is not interested in completing the contract by creating his counter expression. This can be through outright rejection, the offer is rejected, or through change of conversation, you see, that which is indicative of rejection, or long silence indicative of rejection, or any other means. Walking away, it is a physical means of rejection. So such means too can be they can also result in termination of the session, because the session of contract is terminated also based on custom, where any indication of rejecting the offer is provided. You see? By custom, any gesture or any movement or any occurrence which will be construed as rejection of the offer, that will result in the termination of the session. Well, so the offer and acceptance, they should follow one another, and there should not be any indication of rejection or termination. And also, the offerer should not withdraw the offer. The party who creates the expression first, after creating the expression that I have hereby created such and such a contract, he could sometimes withdraw the offer as well. If he withdraws the offer, then too, the other party may not provide an acceptance or create a counter expression and complete the contract. Why? By the time the second expression comes, the first expression has already been withdrawn by the party. Now, can the offerer withdraw the offer that he has already made? There are details pertaining to this. Well, now, with regard to parties who are creating the contract while being away from each other, you see, parties who are creating the contract while being away from each other. This can happen in many ways, many situations. One person is in one location and the other person is in another location. You see? And they are contracting by any form of communication. Now, when this is the case, there is a distance between them. This distance can happen in two ways. This distance can be either physical distance only, which means that the parties are in two different locations, but they are creating the contract at the same time. They are communicating with each other through an immediate means, such as communicating over the phone or online or any other direct means of communication. So here, the parties are physically distant from each other, but the time span in which they create the contract is the same. So this is a less complicated situation because only physical distance is involved. Uh, Chronological or time distance is not involved. Time span is the same, only that they are physically away from each other. Another more complicated situation is when the parties are away from each other and are creating the contract also at different times, which means that the time when the offer is created is not the same as the time when the acceptance is created. Both of them are created at different points of time. Where can this happen? Yes, this can happen, for instance, if they are contracting through writing, writing letters, for instance. Okay? One person writes and posts his offer, for instance, sends his offer or sends through a messenger the offer to the other party. So the offer is created at one time and the acceptance could be created once the offer reaches the other party, which could be after hours, days, or weeks. Whenever the offer reaches the other party, the remaining part of the contract will be created. So the expression will be created not only at different locations, but also at different points of time. So there's a distance of two dimensions here. The physical dimension as well as the time dimension, both are involved. Well, so now for such contracts to be created, there is session of contract too, because session of contract is a common requirement. The offer or the acceptance, the expressions need to remain alive and valid for them to join together to form the contract. So in contracts created with the involvement of physical distance or physical distance and time distance in their creation, the session that exists in such contracting is referred to as constructive session. Constructive session or majlis hukmi. Constructive session means that there is a session in the eyes of law. The law visualizes that there is a session, although the parties are not creating the contract while being physically together at the same location. So this session is referred to as constructive session because in the eyes of law, this distance is disregarded. Although they are away from each other, this distance is disregarded and they are considered to be at the same location. And although the parties are creating the contract at different points of time, this time distance is disregarded and they are considered to be creating the contract at the same point of time within the same time span. So within the session, I think I explained in the previous class that the whole of the session is considered as a single point of time. Because we said that if this is not the case, no contract can ever be created, because as soon as the party indicates his intention, a contractual intent, now it is his intent at that moment. At the next moment, whether it is his intent or not, until he verifies and clarifies, we cannot know. So for this purpose, we said within the session of contract, the time is frozen. The expression exists until it is met with the acceptance. Well, so constructive session is the session that exists between parties who are creating a contract while away from each other, where the physical and time distances are disregarded, and so in this manner, it is construed as the parties creating the contract at the same session, within the same session. Well, so there are details here about the need for acceptance as soon as the offer reaches, or what is the duration in which the other party can accept. So remember that these brief principles that we discussed now indicate the default position in contracts. By default, the contract is to be created within the same session while the parties are either together, and if they break up, the session is ended. And if the parties create the contract while they're away from each other, we take the constructive session to be in place. And this is the fundamental or details by default for creating the contract as far as continuity is concerned. Well, so read on this and find out more about the details pertaining to this, because this is an essential aspect with regard to the formation of the contract by conjunction materializing through the expressions coming together. Well, now I hope that we can go to our next topic, which is contracting parties or archidain. The second essential element the second essential element after expression, the contracting parties, contractors. There should be contractors who are creating the contract. Well, now under contracting parties, we shall be essentially discussing about legal capacity, the capability of the contractors to create a contract, who is capable to create contracts, who is not capable, and what are those factors which can prevent a person from being eligible to create a contract, and how can a person become disqualified from creating a contract after having been eligible. So we shall discuss in a general manner, whereas, as I said, specific contracts may have their specific requirements with regard to contractors as well. And some contracts, certain special qualifications are required for the contractors. If we had discussed about the contract of loan, such as we used to do in normal semesters, by this time I would have finished loan contract. There you would have noticed that in addition to the normal requirements for creating a contract of loan in Islamic law, there is an additional requirement for the lender, which you refer to as the capacity of tabarru. In addition to having legal capacity for the loan contract, there is an additional requirement, which is capacity of tabarru, or the capacity for creating charitable contracts, gratuitous contracts. Everyone cannot create this. Well, so we shall look at legal capacity. Now, legal capacity has two types. The one relates to the capacity which is directly relevant to contracting, the capacity of execution, or ahliyatul ada. This is what we want to focus on. The capacity of execution or ahliyatul ada is the one that is required for creating a contract. But along with this, we shall talk about another underlying form of capacity, which is ahliyatul wujub, which in fact every human being possesses. So it is not directly relevant to contracting, because a person who has the capacity of execution or ahliyatul ada will invariably have capacity of wujub or assuming as well, but not the other way around. Well, so we shall talk about these two types of legal capacities. Who can tell me the Arabic term for legal capacity?
Ahliya. Ahliya.
Ahliya, yes, correct. The Arabic term for legal capacity is ahliya, eligibility. Being ahl or being capable of doing something is ahliya. So under this we have two categories: ahliyatul wujub, which are translated as the capacity of assuming. You may come across other terms in your books. And the second is ahliyatul ada, or the capacity of executing or execution. Well, first something about the capacity of assuming. This capacity is in fact held by every human being. We mean every human being who is alive. So this capacity is held by every person who has come into being, in the sense that he is born and hasn't passed away or died yet. Meaning this capacity is held by human beings who are alive. You see? Human beings, all human beings who are alive have the capacity of assuming. This means that before birth, a person does not have this capacity. And after death, a person does not have this capacity. It sounds very simple, but it's astounding to notice in exams how many of you haven't grasped this correctly. It sounds very much simple, basic, but when the exam comes and I look at your answer scripts, I'll see that many of you, if not most of you, fail to understand this. That before birth, the person does not have the capacity of assuming, and after death, the person does not have the capacity of assuming, meaning the features which are based on this capacity, or the powers a person obtains through this capacity, are not possessed by him before birth and after death. Briefly, we shall discuss later. The basic feature of this capacity is it entitles the human being